Do you think I'm beautiful? Daniel Hayes froze, his hand still on the keyboard. The photograph still glowing on the screen. Victoria Sterling, billionaire CEO. The woman who made grown men cry in boardrooms stood 3 feet behind him, waiting for an answer. He was an IT technician. He fixed computers. He made $11 more than minimum wage. He had a daughter at home and a car held together by duct tape. And the most powerful woman in the building had just asked him if she was beautiful. Daniel turned around slowly. Yes, he said, but not for the reason you think. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Explain. Comment below what city you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. 14 minutes earlier. Last IT guy who went up there came back in tears. Daniel looked at the security guard. What happened to him? Don't know. He quit the next day. Wouldn't talk about it. The elevator doors opened. Daniel stepped inside. Floor 45. The button glowed green this time. He pressed it. The doors closed. Daniel checked his reflection in the polished metal. 44 years old. Thinning hair. A face that looked tired because it was tired. Because single fathers of 8-year-old girls didn't get the luxury of looking rested. The elevator climbed. His phone buzzed. A text from his ex-wife Sophie needs new shoes. Don't forget. He typed back, I won't forget. She replied instantly, you always forget. Daniel put the phone away. He'd worked at Sterling Industries for 3 years, never been above the 12th floor. His territory was the basement and the cubicle farms, places where nobody noticed if your shirt was wrinkled or your shoes were scuffed. Up here was different. Up here was executive territory. The kind of place where assistants wore suits that cost more than his monthly rent. The elevator stopped. Daniel stepped out. A receptionist looked up. Gray hair, cold eyes, the kind of face that had dismissed 1,000 people before they opened their mouths. You're late. The elevator. Miss Sterling's computer crashed during a board call. She has another meeting in 40 minutes. The woman pointed down the hall. End of the corridor. Doors open. Knock anyway. Daniel walked. His footsteps echoed. The hallway felt longer than it should. He reached the door, knocked twice. Come in. Victoria Sterling stood with her back to him, phone pressed to her ear. I don't care what Tokyo says. If they can't deliver, we restructure. I'm not paying for excuses. She ended the call. Turned around. Her eyes swept over Daniel like he was a misdelivered package. You're from IT. Yes, ma'am. Daniel Hayes, the system crash. I know why you're here. She pointed at her desk. 3 dead monitors. Fix it. Daniel moved to the desk, set down his toolkit, started working. Victoria didn't leave. She stood by the windows, arms crossed, watching him. Silent. Most people talked while Daniel worked, asked how long it would take, explained what happened like he hadn't understood the first time. Victoria just watched. The same intensity she probably used when she was deciding whether to fire someone or buy their company. Daniel powered down the system, checked connections, initiated restart. The monitors flickered. One by one they came back to life. The desktop loaded. Then the background image appeared. Daniel's hand stopped moving. It was Victoria Sterling. But not this Victoria Sterling. Not the CEO in the designer suit with eyes like weapons. This was someone else entirely. A wooden dock. A lake behind her. Mountains in the distance. She wore jeans, a white sweater, hair down, loose, and she was smiling. Not a boardroom smile. Not a photo op smile. A real smile. The kind that happens when nobody's watching. Daniel reached for the keyboard to close it. Stop. He turned. Victoria was right behind him. Close. Too close. She was staring at the screen, at herself, at whoever she used to be. You saw it, she said. Daniel's throat went dry. I'm sorry. The system loaded wrong. I know you weren't. She moved closer to the desk. Her eyes never left the photograph. 3 years ago, she said quietly. I forgot I'd set it as the background. Silence. Daniel didn't know what to say, so he said nothing. Victoria turned to look at him, directly. Something in her expression he couldn't read. Not anger, not embarrassment, something else. What did you think? Ma'am. The photograph. What did you think when you saw it? I don't think my opinion matters, Miss Sterling. But you have one. She tilted her head, studying him. Everyone has opinions, they just don't say them out loud. Daniel looked at the photograph again. At the woman who smiled like she meant it. He could lie. Tell her she looked professional, powerful, successful, all the things she probably heard every day from people who wanted something. Or he could tell the truth. You look real, he said. Like a person, not a position. The silence that followed felt like a held breath. Victoria stared at him. Something cracked in her expression, just slightly, just enough. No one has said that to me in 15 years. Daniel didn't respond. He didn't know how. Then Victoria asked the question. Do you think I'm beautiful? The words hit him like cold water. I'm sorry, what? Simple question. Her voice was calm, clinical. In that photograph, do you think I'm beautiful? Daniel's mind raced. This was a trap. Had to be. Some kind of HR nightmare. Some test he was about to fail. But she was waiting. And something in her eyes told him she'd know if he lied. Yes, he said quietly. You're beautiful in that photograph. But not because of how you look. Victoria's eyebrows lifted. Explain. You look peaceful, like you're somewhere you actually want to be. Doing something you chose to do. He paused. That's what makes the photograph beautiful. Not your face, not your clothes. You just look like yourself. Victoria stood very still. Then the mask cracked. Just for a moment. Something underneath. Something vulnerable. Something real. No one sees that, she said softly. No one sees me. I did. The words came out before Daniel could stop them. Victoria looked at him, really looked, like she was seeing him for the first time. What's your name again? Daniel. Daniel Hayes. How long have you worked here, Daniel? 3 years. And in 3 years has anyone ever asked your opinion about anything? He almost laughed. No, ma'am, I fix computers. Nobody cares what I think. I care. 2 words, but they landed heavy. Victoria walked back to the windows, put distance between them. Finish the login. I have meetings. Daniel turned back to the computer. His hands moved automatically. The photograph disappeared. The standard desktop loaded. Everything's working, he said. If you have any other issues, I will. He stopped. Ma'am. Victoria turned. Backlit by the sun, her face in shadow. I'll have other issues, and when I do, I want you to fix them. Daniel picked up his toolkit. The help desk can send anyone. I don't want anyone. I want you. He didn't know what to say to that. Goodbye, Mr. Hayes. Daniel walked to the door, stopped, turned back. Miss Sterling. Yes? That place in the photograph, the lake. Something flickered in her eyes. What about it? You should go back sometime. You looked happy there. Victoria's expression shifted. Something like surprise. Something like pain. Happy, she repeated, like she was trying to remember what the word meant. Daniel left. The elevator doors closed. He leaned against the wall and let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. The 3rd floor felt different when he got back. Same cubicles, same fluorescent lights, same hum of computers and distant complaints about the coffee machine. But Daniel felt different. He sat at his desk, stared at his screen. 3 new help tickets waiting. Hayes. He looked up. His supervisor, Frank Morrison, stood at the edge of his cubicle, arms crossed, face like a constipated accountant. Yeah? Where were you? Help ticket, executive floor. Frank's eyebrows shot up. 45. Yes. Who called it in? Miss Sterling's assistant. Frank went pale. Actually pale, like someone had mentioned a ghost. You were in Victoria Sterling's office. Her computer crashed. And I fixed it. Frank stared at him, waiting for more. Daniel gave him nothing. Well, Frank said slowly. Don't expect to go back up there. That's Marcus Chen's territory. Senior technicians only. Understood. Frank lingered, like he wanted to ask more. Then he walked away, glancing back twice. Daniel turned to his computer. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. Hello. Mr. Hayes. A woman's voice. Professional. Clipped. This is Rachel Henley, Miss Sterling's executive assistant. Daniel's stomach dropped. Yes. Miss Sterling would like to speak with you. Can you come to the 45th floor at 6 p.m. this evening? I have to pick up my daughter from school at 3:30. A pause. Miss Sterling is aware you have a child. She suggests you arrange alternative care for this evening. Daniel's grip tightened on the phone. Can I ask what this is about? Miss Sterling will explain when you arrive. 6 p.m. Don't be late. The line went dead. Daniel stared at his phone. This was it. He was getting fired. He'd said something wrong. Crossed a line. Told a billionaire she looked like a person instead of a position, and now his career was over. Sophie's face flashed in his mind. Her smile, her laugh. The way she called him Daddy when she was scared. He couldn't lose this job. He couldn't. Ton. He picked Sophie up at 3:30. She climbed into the car, talking a mile a minute. Science project. Volcanoes. 2 boys fighting at lunch. Daniel listened. Nodded. Said the right things at the right moments. But his mind was elsewhere. Dad. He looked at her. Yeah, sweetheart. Sophie was staring at him. 8 years old, but with eyes too old for her face. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. You're lying. Your eye does that twitchy thing when you lie. Daniel almost smiled. Almost. I might be in trouble at work. What kind of trouble? I don't know yet. I have to go back tonight to find out. Sophie was quiet for a moment. Dad? Yeah. Am I pretty? The question hit Daniel like a punch. What? Emily Parker said I'm not pretty because my clothes are from Walmart. She said, pretty girls don't wear Walmart clothes. Daniel pulled the car over. Right there. In the middle of the street. Some guy behind him honked. Daniel didn't care. He turned to face his daughter. Look at me. Sophie looked. You are the most beautiful girl I know, and you know why. She shook her head. Because you're real. Because you're kind. Because when Mrs. Patterson's cat got sick, you made her a get-well card. Because you share your lunch with Tommy Martinez, even though he never shares back. Sophie's eyes were wet. But Emily said, Emily Parker doesn't know anything about beautiful. Daniel took her hand. Beautiful isn't about clothes or money or what store your stuff comes from. Beautiful is who you are when nobody's watching. And you, Sophie Hayes, are beautiful every single day. Sophie lunged across the seat and hugged him. Daniel held her tight. Behind them, another car honked. Daniel didn't move. He dropped Sophie at Mrs. Patterson's apartment at 5:30. Big meeting? The old woman asked. Something like that. You look nervous. I am nervous. Mrs. Patterson smiled. Good things come to those who are nervous enough to care. Sophie will be fine. Go. Daniel went. The elevator to the 45th floor felt different this time. Heavier. Slower. Or maybe that was just him. The doors opened. Rachel Henley was waiting. "Follow me." She led him down the same hallway, past the same windows with the same view of the same city that looked so small from up here. They stopped at a door Daniel hadn't noticed before. A conference room. Rachel opened it. "Go in, she's waiting." Daniel walked in. Victoria Sterling sat at the head of a long table, alone, folders spread in front of her. She looked up. "Close the door." He closed it. "Sit." He sat. Victoria studied him for a long moment, the same way she'd studied him that morning, like she was trying to see something underneath. "You're afraid," she said. "Yes, ma'am." "You think I'm going to fire you?" The thought crossed my mind. "Because of what you said this morning?" "Yes." Victoria leaned back in her chair. "You told me I looked real. Like a person instead of a position. You told me I looked happy in a photograph that I'd forgotten existed." She paused. "And when I asked if I was beautiful, you told me the truth." Daniel said nothing. "Do you know how many people tell me the truth, Mr. Hayes?" "I imagine not many." "None." Her voice was flat. "Zero. In 15 years of running this company, not a single person has told me anything except what they thought I wanted to hear." She stood, walked to the window. "I'm worth $2.3 billion. I control companies on 4 continents. When I walk into a room, people stop breathing." She turned to face him. "And I haven't felt like a person in 15 years, not until this morning. Not until an IT technician looked at a photograph and saw something that nobody else could see." Daniel's heart was pounding. "I'm starting a new project," Victoria said. "Confidential, small team. I need people who will tell me the truth. People who aren't afraid of me." She walked to the table, slid a folder toward him. "I want you on this team." Daniel stared at the folder, then at her. "I fix computers." "I know. I don't know anything about whatever this is." "I know that too." Victoria sat down across from him. "But you see things, Mr. Hayes. You see people. And right now, that's exactly what I need." Daniel looked at the folder, looked at Victoria, looked at the woman who'd asked a stranger if she was beautiful and gotten the only honest answer she'd received in 15 years. "My daughter comes first," he said. "Always. I would expect nothing less. And if I disagree with you, if I think you're wrong about something, then I expect you to tell me." Victoria's eyes locked onto his. "That's the whole point." Daniel reached for the folder. He opened it. Inside a single handwritten note on the first page, "Thank you for seeing me. V.S." He looked up. Victoria was watching him, waiting. "So," she said. "What do you say?" Daniel thought about Sophie, about stability, about the risk of stepping out of the shadows into something he didn't understand. He thought about Emily Parker telling his daughter she wasn't pretty. He thought about Victoria Sterling asking a stranger if she was beautiful. He thought about all the invisible people in the world who just wanted someone to see them. "I say yes," Daniel said. "But I have one condition." Victoria's eyebrows rose. "Name it." "That photograph, the one by the lake." "What about it?" "Promise me you'll go back there someday. Not for business, not for anyone else, just for yourself." Victoria was silent for a long moment. Then something shifted in her face. The mask cracked again. Just a little, just enough. "You're asking a lot. You asked me if you were beautiful. Fair's fair." For the first time since he'd met her, Victoria Sterling smiled. Not a boardroom smile. Not a CEO smile. A real smile. "Deal," she said. Daniel got home at 8:47. Sophie was asleep on Mrs. Patterson's couch, clutching a stuffed elephant she'd had since she was 3. He carried her to their apartment, tucked her into bed, stood in her doorway for a long moment. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Monday, 6 p.m. Don't be late. VS. Daniel stared at the screen. 3 hours ago he'd been invisible. Just another IT guy in a building full of people who didn't know his name. Now he was something else. He didn't know what yet, but for the first time in years he wasn't afraid to find out. He looked at Sophie. Asleep. Safe. Beautiful in all the ways that mattered. "We're going to be okay, sweetheart," he whispered. "I promise." He closed her door, went to bed, and for the first time in a very long time, Daniel Hayes didn't dream about being invisible. Monday came faster than Daniel expected. The weekend passed in a blur of grocery shopping homework help and Sophie's endless questions about volcanoes for her science project. Daniel tried to focus on normal life, but his mind kept drifting to the folder sitting on his kitchen counter. He'd read it 3 times, then 3 more times. A confidential initiative to transform company culture. Employee wellness. Truth-telling. Real change. It sounded like corporate nonsense. The kind of thing executives talked about in meetings while nothing actually changed. But Victoria Sterling didn't seem like the kind of woman who wasted time on nonsense. At 5:15 on Monday, Daniel kissed Sophie goodbye at Mrs. Patterson's door. "Will you be late again?" Sophie asked. "Probably, but I'll come get you as soon as I'm done." "Promise. Promise." Mrs. Patterson put a hand on Sophie's shoulder. "We'll be fine. I'm teaching her to make cookies tonight." Sophie's face lit up. "Chocolate chip? Is there any other kind?" Daniel smiled. "Thanks, Mrs. Patterson." "Go. Do your important thing. We've got this." Daniel went. The elevator to the 45th floor felt different this time. Less terrifying. Still nerve-wracking, but different. Like the first day at a new school instead of walking into a firing squad. The doors opened. Rachel Henley was waiting again. Same professional expression. Same clipped voice. "Conference room B, end of the hall. The others are already there." "Others? Miss Sterling will explain." Daniel walked. His footsteps echoed in the empty hallway. Most of the executive floor had gone home for the day. Only a few offices still had lights on. He found conference room B. The door was glass. Through it, he could see 3 people sitting at a long table. He recognized none of them. Daniel pushed open the door. All 3 looked up. The first was a man in his 50s, salt and pepper hair, expensive suit. The kind of confident posture that came from decades of winning arguments. The second was a woman about Daniel's age. Red hair pulled back, sharp eyes behind designer glasses. She held a tablet like it was a weapon. The third was younger, maybe 30. Black suit, no tie. He looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "You must be the IT guy," the older man said. Not hostile, just stating a fact. "Daniel Hayes." "Marcus Webb. Legal." He gestured to the others. "Sarah Mitchell, Human Resources. David Chen, Operations." Daniel nodded at each of them. They nodded back, politely, distantly. He sat down at the far end of the table. Nobody spoke. The door opened again. Victoria Sterling walked in. The energy in the room shifted instantly, like someone had turned up the voltage. Marcus straightened. Sarah set down her tablet. David stopped looking bored. Victoria took her seat at the head of the table. She didn't acknowledge the change in atmosphere. Maybe she didn't notice it anymore. Maybe she'd stopped noticing years ago. "Thank you all for being here," she said. "I know this is unusual. A confidential project with a small team meeting after hours, no official documentation." She looked around the table. "I chose each of you for a specific reason. Marcus, you understand the legal frameworks we operate within. Sarah, you have direct insight into employee complaints and concerns. David, you know the operational realities of implementing change at scale." Her eyes landed on Daniel. And Mr. Hayes is here because he understands what it's like to be invisible in this company. Marcus turned to look at Daniel, then Sarah, then David. Daniel felt his face getting warm. He kept his expression neutral. The goal of this project is simple, Victoria continued. I want to understand why talented people leave Sterling Industries, why morale is declining despite competitive salaries, and what we can do to fix it. Sarah leaned forward. Miss Sterling, with respect, we've done employee satisfaction surveys. We have exit interview data. The HR department has been giving me reports that tell me what I want to hear. Victoria's voice was calm but sharp. I don't want filtered data. I want the truth. Sarah sat back, said nothing. Over the next 3 months, we'll conduct confidential interviews with employees at every level. We'll gather real feedback, analyze patterns, then develop recommendations for structural changes. Victoria opened a folder in front of her. This work stays in this room. Nothing we discuss leaves this table. Understood? Everyone nodded. Good. Let's start with what we know. Sarah, walk us through the exit interview trends. Sarah picked up her tablet. Over the past 18 months, voluntary turnover has increased by 23%. The most common reasons cited are lack of growth opportunities, poor management communication, and feeling undervalued. Feeling undervalued, Victoria repeated. What does that mean specifically? Sarah hesitated. The data doesn't break it down further. Then the data is useless. Victoria turned to Daniel. Mr. Hayes, you've worked here for 3 years. What does feeling undervalued mean to the people on your floor? Every eye in the room turned to Daniel. He thought about lying, about giving a safe corporate answer that wouldn't make waves. Then he remembered why he was here. It means nobody listens, he said. People submit suggestions and never hear back. They report problems and nothing changes. After a while, they stop trying. They just do their jobs, collect their paychecks, and wait for something better to come along. Marcus frowned. That seems like a communication issue. We have systems in place for employee feedback. The systems don't work, Daniel said. 6 months ago, someone on my floor submitted a suggestion about the parking garage lighting. It's too dark in certain sections. Feels unsafe, especially for women leaving after dark. Sarah was typing on her tablet. I can look that up. Don't bother. Nothing happened. The person who submitted it never got a response. Now when anyone asks if they should bother making suggestions, he tells them not to waste their time. Silence. Victoria leaned forward. That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's the kind of thing we need to understand. David spoke for the first time. One ignored suggestion doesn't indicate a systemic problem. It's not one suggestion, Daniel said. It's hundreds, maybe thousands. Every person in this building has a story about a time they tried to make things better and got ignored. After enough stories like that, people stop caring. They just become invisible. The word hung in the air. Victoria's eyes met Daniel's. Something passed between them. Recognition. Understanding. Continue, Mr. Hayes. Daniel took a breath. The third-floor break room has been waiting 4 months for a working microwave. 4 months. Meanwhile, the executive floor has a full catering service. Marcus shifted in his seat. That's a facilities issue. It's a respect issue. Daniel cut him off. It tells people at my level that our comfort doesn't matter, that we're not worth the cost of a microwave. He paused. People notice that stuff. They talk about it. And it shapes how they feel about working here. More silence. Sarah was staring at her tablet. David was frowning. Marcus looked like he'd swallowed something sour. Victoria stood up. This is exactly why Mr. Hayes is on this team. He sees what the rest of us miss, because we're too far removed from it. She looked at the others. I don't want comfortable answers. I want truth. Even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. She sat back down. Sarah, I want you to pull all unresolved employee suggestions from the past 2 years. Every single one. Marcus, review our feedback policies and identify where the breakdowns occur. David, I want an assessment of resource allocation between executive and general employee areas. And Mr. Hayes. Daniel looked up. I want you to talk to people, off the record. Find out what they're not saying in official channels. Daniel nodded. Yes, ma'am. The meeting continued for another hour. They discussed interview protocols, timelines, confidentiality agreements. By the time Victoria called it to an end, Daniel's head was spinning. Everyone filed out except Victoria. Daniel gathered his things slowly, unsure if he should leave or wait. Mr. Hayes. He looked up. Victoria was still seated. Her expression softer than during the meeting. You did well tonight. I just told the truth. That's exactly what I needed. She paused. The others will resist you. Marcus thinks employee feedback is a legal liability waiting to happen. Sarah is defensive because it's her department that's been failing. David just wants to go home. And you? Victoria tilted her head slightly. What about me? What do you want? It was a bold question. Daniel knew it as soon as the words left his mouth. But Victoria didn't seem offended. I want to feel like I'm building something that matters, she said quietly. Not just a company that makes money. Something real. Daniel thought about the photograph, the lake, the smile. That woman by the lake, he said. She wanted the same thing. Victoria's expression flickered. Something vulnerable underneath. You remember that. Hard to forget. She stood, walked to the window. The city spread out below all lights and shadows. That photograph was taken at my grandmother's cabin, 4 days alone. No phone, no meetings, no one needing anything from me. She turned to face him. It was the last time I felt like myself. When was that? 3 years ago. That's a long time to not feel like yourself. Victoria smiled. But it wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile people wear when they're trying not to cry. Yes, it is. Daniel didn't know what to say, so he said the only thing that felt true. You should go back there. So you've mentioned. I mean it. This project, this company, all of it, none of it matters if you lose yourself in the process. Victoria stared at him. You're very direct, Mr. Hayes. I thought that's why I was here. It is. She walked back to the table, picked up her folder. Same time Thursday. Don't be late. I won't be. Daniel walked to the door. Stopped. Turned back. Miss Sterling. Yes. You asked me if you were beautiful. You never asked me why I said yes. Victoria went still. You said I looked peaceful. I said you looked like yourself. That's different. How? Daniel thought about it. Really thought about it. Peaceful is something you feel. Looking like yourself is something you are. One can change with circumstances. The other is underneath everything else. He paused. In that photograph, I could see who you are. Not what you've built or what you've accomplished. Just you. Victoria didn't respond. Daniel left. The elevator ride down felt different than all the others. Not lighter exactly, but less heavy. Like something had shifted. Like a door had opened somewhere. He picked up Sophie at Mrs. Patterson's apartment. She was covered in flour and grinning. Dad, we made cookies. I can see that. He wiped a smudge of chocolate from her cheek. Did you save me any? 3. Mrs. Patterson said you deserve at least 3. Only 3. You weren't here to make them. 3 is fair. Daniel laughed. The first real laugh in days. 3 is fair. They walked home together, Sophie chattering about cookies and volcanoes, and Emily Parker, who was apparently being nicer now because Sophie had shared her lunch with her even after the Walmart comment. Why did you share with her after she was mean? Daniel asked. Sophie shrugged. Because she looked hungry and lonely. Mean people are usually just sad people who don't know how to say they're sad. Daniel stopped walking. 8 years old. His daughter was 8 years old, and she understood something that most adults never figured out. "When did you get so smart?" he asked. "I've always been smart. You just don't always notice." She grinned and ran ahead, and Daniel followed, thinking about sad people who didn't know how to say they were sad, and billionaire CEOs who asked strangers if they were beautiful because they'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen. The weeks that followed fell into a new rhythm. Regular work during the day. Project meetings Monday and Thursday evenings. Daniel interviewed employees from different departments, wrote up their feedback, brought it back to the team. Some of what he heard confirmed his own experiences. Ignored suggestions. Broken equipment that never got fixed. Managers who didn't know their employees' names. Some of it surprised him. A woman in accounting who'd been passed over for promotion 3 times despite stellar reviews. A guy in marketing who'd been harassed by his supervisor for months and HR had done nothing. A janitor who'd worked at Sterling Industries for 22 years and had never once been thanked by anyone above him. Daniel wrote it all down, brought it to the meetings, read it out loud while Marcus squirmed and Sarah took defensive notes and David checked his phone when he thought no one was looking. Victoria listened to everything. She asked questions, pushed for details, demanded specifics. And slowly, something started to change. Not in the company. Not yet. That would take time. But in the room, in the way the team worked together. Marcus stopped dismissing Daniel's feedback as anecdotal. Sarah stopped defending HR and started actually looking at the problems. David put away his phone, and Victoria started to relax. Just slightly. Just enough that Daniel could see glimpses of the woman in the photograph. It happened in small moments. A genuine laugh when David made a self-deprecating joke about operations. A softening around her eyes when Sarah admitted that HR had failed in ways she hadn't wanted to see. A quiet thank you after Daniel shared a particularly difficult interview about workplace discrimination. They were building something. Daniel could feel it. Something real. And somewhere in the margins of professional discussions and confidential feedback, he and Victoria started talking about other things. She asked about Sophie. "She's obsessed with volcanoes right now," Daniel said after the 4th meeting. "I know more about magma chambers than any IT technician should." "That's good. Curiosity is important." "Did you have obsessions like that when you were a kid?" Victoria's expression flickered. "I was obsessed with building things. Blocks, Legos, anything I could stack and arrange and create." "Is that why you started a company?" "Partially. Also because everyone told me I couldn't." Daniel smiled. Spite is a powerful motivator. The most powerful. Victoria smiled back. "What about you? What were you obsessed with as a kid?" "Taking things apart. Electronics mostly. Radios, clocks, my mom's toaster once. She was not happy about that." "Did you put them back together?" "Sometimes, when I could figure out how they worked." He paused. "That's still what I do, I guess. Figure out how broken things work and try to fix them." "That's a useful skill." "For computers." "For everything." The way she said it made Daniel feel like she wasn't talking about computers at all. On the 6th Thursday after everyone else had left, Victoria asked Daniel to stay. "I have something to tell you," she said. Daniel's stomach tightened. "Okay." "The board is reviewing the project next month. Some of them think it's a waste of resources." "What do you think?" "I think it's the most important thing I've done in years." She sat down heavily. "But the board doesn't see that. They see costs without immediate returns. They see risk. What happens if they shut it down? Everything we've built disappears. All the feedback, all the recommendations, gone." Daniel was quiet for a moment. "Then we don't let them shut it down." "It's not that simple." "Why not?" Victoria looked at him with something like frustration. Because I'm not the only one who controls this company. I have a board, shareholders, obligations. You're a billionaire. You own more of this company than anyone else. Ownership doesn't mean control. Not completely. She rubbed her temples. There are people who want me gone, who think I'm too focused on soft issues instead of profit margins. This project gives them ammunition. Daniel leaned forward. Then give them something else. Show them data that proves this matters. Show them the cost of turnover, the cost of replacing talent, the cost of ignoring problems until they explode. We don't have enough data yet. Then we get it faster. We work harder. We do whatever it takes. Victoria stared at him. You really believe in this, don't you? I believe in what we're trying to do. I believe that how companies treat people matters. I believe that you matter. He paused. And I believe that woman in the photograph, the one who looks like herself, she's still in there somewhere. She just needs a reason to come back. Victoria didn't respond. She just looked at him with an expression he couldn't read. Then she said, My grandmother used to say that the universe sends us the people we need exactly when we need them. That's a nice thought. I never believed it. Until now. The words hung in the air between them. Daniel didn't know what to say. His heart was beating too fast. The room felt too small. I should go, he said. Sophie's waiting. Of course. Victoria stood. Same time Monday. Same time Monday. Daniel walked to the door, stopped, turned back. Miss Sterling. Victoria, she said quietly. When we're alone, you can call me Victoria. Daniel nodded slowly. Victoria. The word felt strange in his mouth, heavy with something he didn't want to name. Good night, Daniel. Good night. He left. The elevator doors closed. Daniel leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. What are you doing? He asked himself. What the hell are you doing? He didn't have an answer, but he knew one thing for certain. He was in way over his head, and he had no idea how to swim. The call came at 2:47 on a Wednesday afternoon. Daniel was crawling under a desk on the 5th floor, trying to reconnect a cable that someone had accidentally kicked loose when his phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again. Then again. He slid out from under the desk dust on his shirt and checked the screen. 3 missed calls from Victoria Sterling. His stomach dropped. Victoria never called during work hours. Their arrangement was clear. Monday and Thursday evenings, nothing in between, nothing that would raise questions or attract attention. He called back immediately. She answered on the first ring. How fast can you get to my office? What happened? How fast? Be 10 minutes. Make it 5. The line went dead. Daniel told his supervisor he had an emergency. He didn't wait for approval. He just walked to the elevator and pressed 45. The ride up felt endless. When the doors opened, Rachel Henley was waiting. Her face was pale. Her usual professional composure cracked around the edges. This way, quickly. She led him down the hall. Not to the conference room, to Victoria's private office. The door was closed. Rachel knocked once, then opened it without waiting for a response. Victoria was standing at the window, her back to the door, her shoulders rigid. Leave us, she said without turning around. Rachel nodded and closed the door behind her. Daniel stood in the middle of the office, waiting, his heart pounding. Someone leaked the project, Victoria said finally. Her voice was flat, controlled. The way people sound when they're trying very hard not to scream. Leaked it to who? Richard Donovan, board member, my biggest critic. She turned around. Her face was composed, but her eyes were burning. He called an emergency board meeting for Friday. He's presenting a motion to shut down the initiative and remove me from operational control. Daniel felt like the floor had shifted under his feet. Can he do that? With enough votes, yes. Victoria walked to her desk, sat down heavily. I've spent 15 years building this company. 15 years. And in 2 days, it could all be over. Who leaked it? I don't know yet, but I will. What do you need me to do? Victoria looked at him. Really looked, like she was seeing him for the first time all over again. I need to present to the board. Show them everything we've found. The data, the testimonials, the evidence that this company is hemorrhaging talent because we've forgotten that employees are people, not resources. That sounds like the right approach. I need you there. Daniel stared at her. What? In the board meeting. I need you there. Victoria, I'm an IT technician. I have no business being in a board meeting. You have every business being there. She stood up, walked toward him. You're the reason this project exists. You're proof that the invisible people in this company have voices worth hearing. They won't listen to me. I'm nobody to them. That's exactly why they need to hear you. Victoria was standing close now, close enough that Daniel could see the fear underneath her composure, the desperation. Please, Daniel, I can't do this alone. It was the first time she'd ever said his first name without prompting. It was the first time she'd ever admitted she needed anyone. Daniel thought about Sophie, about his job, about everything he stood to lose if this went wrong. Then he thought about the woman in the photograph, the one who smiled like she meant it, the one who'd forgotten what it felt like to be herself. Okay, he said. I'll be there. Victoria exhaled, like she'd been holding her breath since the phone call. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I might make things worse. You won't. Her hand touched his arm. Brief. Light. But Daniel felt it like electricity. You're the most honest person I've ever met. That's exactly what they need to hear. The next 2 days were chaos. Daniel barely slept. He went through every interview he'd conducted, every piece of feedback he'd collected, every story about broken microwaves, and ignored suggestions and talented people who left because nobody cared enough to listen. He organized it, analyzed it, turned raw pain into data points and statistics. At night, after Sophie was asleep, he practiced what he would say. Standing in his kitchen, talking to an empty room, trying to find words that would make rich men in expensive suits understand what it felt like to be invisible. Sophie noticed something was different. Dad, are you scared about something? They were eating dinner on Thursday night. Spaghetti from a box because Daniel hadn't had time to cook anything real. A little, he admitted. What are you scared about? I have to talk to some important people tomorrow, people who might not want to listen to me. Sophie twirled her spaghetti thoughtfully. My teacher says that the scariest things are usually the most important things. That's why they're scary. Your teacher sounds smart. She is, even with the poodle haircut. Daniel smiled, but it faded quickly. What if they don't listen? He asked, more to himself than to Sophie. Then you talk louder. It's not that simple, sweetheart. Sophie looked at him with those two old eyes. Dad, remember when I told you about Emily Parker, how she said I wasn't pretty because of my clothes? I remember. You said beautiful isn't about clothes. It's about who you are when nobody's watching. She put down her fork. Maybe you need to show those important people who you are, not try to be someone they want you to be. Daniel stared at his 8-year-old daughter. Sometimes kids understood things that adults spent their whole lives trying to figure out. When did you get so wise? He asked. Sophie grinned. I've always been wise. You just don't always notice. Friday morning arrived too fast. Daniel dropped Sophie at school, drove to Sterling Industries, and took the elevator to the 45th floor for the last time as an invisible man. Whatever happened today, everything would be different. The boardroom was on the far end of the executive floor. A massive room with a table that could seat 20. Floor-to-ceiling windows. The kind of room where futures were decided. Daniel arrived early. Victoria was already there. She was wearing black, sharp, severe, like armor. How do you feel? She asked. Terrified. Good. That means you care. How do you feel? Victoria was quiet for a moment. Like I'm about to fight for everything I've built, and I'm not sure I'm going to win. Then we make sure you win. Victoria almost smiled. Almost. Daniel, whatever happens in there, I want you to know that you've changed something for me. These past weeks, the conversations we've had, the way you see things. She paused. The way you see me. Victoria. No, let me finish. She took a breath. I've been so focused on building an empire that I forgot why I started in the first place. You reminded me. You made me feel like a person again. Whatever happens today that matters, that will always matter. Daniel didn't know what to say, so he said the only thing that felt true. You're going to win. You don't know that. I know you. That's enough. The board members started arriving at 9 o'clock. 12 people, 7 men, 5 women, all of them in expensive suits, all of them with faces trained to reveal nothing. Richard Donovan was the last to arrive. He was in his 60s, silver hair, cold eyes, the kind of man who looked at everything like he was calculating its value. His eyes swept over Daniel with visible contempt. I wasn't aware we were inviting the help to board meetings. Mr. Hayes is part of the project team, Victoria said. Her voice was ice. He has relevant testimony. Testimony? Donovan smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. This isn't a courtroom, Victoria. This is a business discussion about resource allocation. It's a discussion about the future of this company. Mr. Hayes will participate. Donovan shrugged. Your call, for now. Everyone took their seats. Daniel sat at the far end of the table, away from the power center, invisible even here. Donovan stood. Thank you all for making time on short notice. I've called this meeting because I have serious concerns about a confidential initiative that has been consuming company resources without board oversight. He pressed a button. A presentation appeared on the screen behind him. The Culture Transformation Project, begun 8 weeks ago, run by a small team handpicked by our CEO. He glanced at Victoria. No board approval, no formal budget allocation. Employees being interviewed without HR supervision. Sensitive data being collected without proper protocols. He clicked to the next slide. Cost to date approximately $340,000 in personnel hours alone. Projected annual cost if continued over $2 million. Murmurs around the table. And what do we have to show for it? Donovan continued. A collection of employee complaints. Stories about broken microwaves and dim parking garages. He looked directly at Victoria. This is not strategic leadership. This is vanity. Victoria stood. May I respond? Of course. This is your meeting too. For now. The threat hung in the air. Victoria walked to the front of the room. Richard is right about one thing. This project was started without formal board approval. That was my decision, and I take full responsibility for it. She clicked to a new slide. Data appeared, numbers and charts. But let me tell you why I made that decision. In the past 18 months, voluntary turnover at Sterling Industries has increased by 23%. We've lost 847 employees, including 43 senior managers and 12 directors. She clicked again. The cost of replacing each of those employees, recruiting, hiring, training, averages $47,000. That's $39 million in replacement costs per year. Another click. Exit interviews consistently cite the same reasons: lack of growth opportunities, poor management communication, and most commonly feeling undervalued. She looked around the table. This project was created to understand what feeling undervalued actually means. Not in survey data, not in HR reports. In real human terms. Because until we understand the problem, we can't fix it. Donovan snorted. And you needed an IT technician to do that. Yes. Victoria's voice was steel. I did. She turned to Daniel. Mr. Hayes, please share what you found. Every eye in the room turned to Daniel. His mouth went dry. His heart was hammering. He thought about Sophie, about talking louder, about showing them who he was instead of trying to be someone they wanted. He stood up. 6 months ago, someone on the third floor submitted a suggestion about the parking garage lighting. Donovan rolled his eyes. Not this again. The lighting is too dim in certain sections. Employees, mostly women, feel unsafe walking to their cars after dark, especially in winter. We have security protocols. The suggestion went into the system and disappeared. No response, no acknowledgement, no action. Daniel looked around the table. The person who submitted it never heard anything. So now when anyone asks him whether they should bother making suggestions, he tells them not to waste their time. That's a facilities issue, one of the board members said. It has nothing to do with... It has everything to do with why people leave this company. Daniel's voice was stronger now. Because it's not about the lights, it's about the message. The message that says, we don't care about you. Your safety doesn't matter. Your ideas don't matter. You don't matter. Silence. Daniel continued. I've spent 8 weeks talking to people at every level of this company. Not surveys, not forms, real conversations. And do you know what I've heard? He looked directly at Donovan. I've heard about a woman in accounting who was passed over for promotion 3 times, despite stellar reviews, because her manager didn't think she was leadership material. She's been here 11 years. She's training the people who got promoted over her. Personnel decisions are... I've heard about a man in marketing who was harassed by his supervisor for 6 months. He reported it to HR twice. Nothing happened. He quit last month. He was the best closer on the sales team. Daniel walked around the table, slowly, making eye contact with each board member. I've heard about a janitor named George who has worked at Sterling Industries for 22 years. 22 years. He knows every floor of this building. He's saved the company thousands of dollars by catching maintenance problems before they became emergencies. And in all that time, not one person above him has ever said thank you. He stopped. That's what feeling undervalued means. It's not abstract. It's not soft. It's real people being told every single day that they're invisible, that they don't matter, that this company would run just fine without them. He looked at Victoria, then back at the board. I'm one of those people. I've worked here for 3 years. I fix your computers. I reset your passwords. I crawl under your desks to reconnect cables. And before 8 weeks ago, I had never once been asked my opinion about anything. And you think that entitles you to sit at this table? Donovan's voice was dripping with contempt. No. Daniel met his eyes. I think it entitles me to tell you the truth, because you're not going to hear it from anyone else. The truth, according to who an IT technician who's been manipulated by a CEO trying to justify wasting company resources. The truth according to the 847 people who left this company last year. The truth according to the thousands more who are still here doing their jobs, collecting their paychecks, and counting the days until they can leave. Daniel walked back to his seat, but he didn't sit down. You want to know why this project matters? Because those people, the invisible ones, the undervalued ones, they're the foundation of everything you've built. Without them, there's no Sterling Industries. There's no boardroom. There's no stock price. There's nothing. He looked at Victoria. Miss Sterling understood that. She saw something the rest of you missed, and instead of thanking her for it, you're trying to punish her. That's quite a speech. Donovan was smiling again. That cold, calculating smile. Very passionate, very emotional. But this is a business, Mr. Hayes, not a charity. And businesses make decisions based on data, not feelings. Fine. Daniel pulled out a folder. You want data? He opened it, started reading. Average cost to replace an entry-level employee, $18,000. Mid-level, $47,000. Senior level, $192,000. Total replacement costs at current turnover rates, $39 million annually. He flipped to the next page. Implementation cost of the proposed changes from this project, $2.7 million over 3 years. Projected reduction in turnover if changes are implemented 40%. Projected savings over 5 years, $78 million. He closed the folder. That's not feelings, that's math. And the math says this project will pay for itself 15 times over. Silence. Donovan's smile had faltered. Just slightly. One of the other board members, a woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, leaned forward. Where did you get those projections, Mr. Hayes? From the exit interview data that HR has been collecting for years, combined with the qualitative feedback from our interviews. Daniel paused. The information was always there. Someone just needed to actually look at it. The woman turned to Donovan. Richard, did you review this data before calling this meeting? The data is speculative. Did you review it? Donovan's jaw tightened. The methodology is questionable. But you didn't review it. I didn't need to review it. The principle of the matter is that you called an emergency board meeting to shut down a project that could save this company $78 million, and you didn't even look at the numbers first. The room went quiet. Victoria spoke. I'm not asking for blind support. I'm asking for time. 6 more months to validate these projections, to implement pilot programs, to prove that this approach works. She looked around the table. And if it doesn't work, if the numbers don't bear out, I'll shut it down myself. No board vote necessary. Another silence. Longer this time. The silver-haired woman spoke again. I move that we table Mr. Donovan's motion and allow the project to continue for 6 months with quarterly progress reports to the board. Seconded. Another board member said. Donovan stood. This is premature. All in favor. Hands went up around the table. 7, 8, 9. All opposed. Donovan's hand. 2 others. Motion carries, 9-3. The project continues. Daniel felt his legs go weak. They'd won. They'd actually won. Victoria's face remained composed, professional, but Daniel could see her hands trembling slightly at her sides. The meeting adjourned. Board members filed out. Most of them avoided eye contact with Daniel. 1 or 2 nodded at him as they passed. The silver-haired woman stopped. That was quite a presentation, Mr. Hayes. Thank you, ma'am. I don't know what your relationship is with Victoria Sterling, and frankly, I don't care. She looked at him steadily. But what you said in there mattered. Remember that. She walked away. Donovan was the last to leave. He stopped in front of Victoria. This isn't over. It never is. You think you've won something. You haven't. You've just delayed the inevitable. Maybe, but I'll take the delay. Donovan's eyes shifted to Daniel. And you. Enjoy your moment. Men like you don't last long at this level. He walked out. Daniel and Victoria stood alone in the empty boardroom. Neither spoke for a long moment. Then Victoria laughed. A real laugh. The kind he'd never heard from her before. We did it. You did it. I just talked. You did more than talk. She walked toward him. Stopped. Close, but not too close. You changed something in that room. I could feel it. I was terrified the whole time. I know. That's what made it real. Daniel exhaled. All the tension from the past 2 days releasing at once. What happens now? Now we get to work. For real this time. With board support. With resources. With a chance to actually change things. And Donovan. Donovan will keep fighting. But he's weaker now. He overplayed his hand. Victoria's expression hardened. But I still need to find out who leaked the project. That person is still here. Still a threat. Do you have suspects? A few. She paused. But that's a problem for another day. Today we celebrate. Celebrate how? Victoria smiled. That real smile. The one from the photograph. I haven't decided yet, but I think it involves you, me, and a very expensive bottle of wine that I've been saving for a moment exactly like this." Daniel's heart skipped. "Victoria. Not tonight. Soon. When this is over. When we can stop pretending that we're just colleagues working on a project together." The words hung in the air. Daniel knew he should say something. Should remind her about power dynamics and professional boundaries, and all the reasons this was complicated. Instead, he said, "I'll bring the glasses." Victoria's smile widened. "It's a date." She walked past him toward the door, then stopped, turned back. "Daniel? Yeah? Thank you, for everything, for seeing me, for fighting for me, for being the most honest person in a building full of liars. Thank you for asking me if you were beautiful." Victoria laughed again, that real laugh. "Best computer crash I ever had." She left. Daniel stood alone in the boardroom for a long moment, looking at the empty chairs, thinking about everything that had just happened, thinking about everything that was about to happen. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Patterson. "Sophie made you a volcano, wants to show you when you get home. Don't be late." Daniel smiled. He had a daughter waiting for him. A volcano to admire. A life that was suddenly very different from the one he'd been living 8 weeks ago. And somewhere on the 45th floor, a woman who looked at him like he was the first real thing she'd seen in years, was opening a very expensive bottle of wine. Life was strange. Life was terrifying. Life was beautiful. Daniel headed for the elevator. He had a volcano to see. Sophie's volcano was magnificent. It stood in the middle of the kitchen table, built from papier-mâché, and painted in shades of orange and red. A plastic cup hidden inside held baking soda ready for the vinegar that would make it erupt. "Mrs. Patterson helped me with the painting," Sophie said proudly. "But I did the structure myself." Daniel crouched down to examine it at eye level. "This is incredible, sweetheart. When's the presentation?" "Monday. Can you come?" "What time?" 2:30. Ms. Rodriguez said parents can watch. Daniel thought about his work schedule, about the project meetings, about everything that had changed in the past 24 hours. "I'll be there," he said. Sophie's face lit up. "Promise, promise." She hugged him. That fierce, wholehearted hug that only 8-year-olds could give. Daniel held her tight and thought about boardrooms and billionaires and the strange turn his life had taken. "Dad? Yeah. You seem happier lately, like really happier." Daniel pulled back to look at her. "Do I?" "Yeah, you smile more, and you don't look tired all the time." She tilted her head. "Is it because of your important work thing?" "Partly." "Is it because of a girl?" Daniel's heart stuttered. "What makes you ask that?" Sophie shrugged. "Tommy Martinez says his dad got happy like that before he started dating his stepmom. He said men get a certain look." "A certain look. Like they're thinking about something nice when they think no one's watching." Daniel didn't know what to say. His 8-year-old daughter had just read him like a book. "There's someone," he admitted carefully. "Someone I've been working with, but it's complicated." "Why?" "Because she's different from me. She lives in a different world, and I'm not sure if what we have is real or just circumstance." Sophie nodded sagely. "Emily Parker said that about me and Maya, that we're only friends because we sit next to each other. But that's not true. We're friends because we like each other. Where you sit doesn't change who you are." Daniel stared at his daughter. "When did you become a philosopher?" "What's a philosopher?" "Someone who says smart things about life." Sophie grinned. "Then I've always been one. You just don't always notice." The next few weeks were different. The project had official support now. Resources, budget, a mandate from the board. But more than that, something had shifted in the way people looked at Daniel when he walked through the building. He wasn't invisible anymore. People nodded at him in hallways, said good morning, asked his opinion in meetings, It was disorienting at first, like suddenly being seen after years of walking through walls. Frank Morrison, his supervisor, treated him differently too, more carefully. Like he wasn't sure anymore where Daniel stood in the hierarchy of things. The executive office called again, Frank said one Tuesday morning. Miss Sterling wants you on the 7th floor at 11. Thanks. What exactly are you doing up there, Hayes? Daniel looked at him. Working on a project. What kind of project? Confidential. Frank's jaw tightened. You know, when you started here you were happy just fixing computers. Now you're running around with executives like you're one of them. I'm not one of them. Could have fooled me. Daniel picked up his toolkit. Is there a point to this conversation? The point is that people are watching, people are talking, and not all of it is good. Let them talk. He walked away before Frank could respond. The project meetings had expanded now. More team members, more data, more momentum. But Daniel's role had changed too. He wasn't just the voice of the invisible people anymore. He was becoming something else. A bridge between two worlds that had never understood each other. Victoria noticed. You're different in these meetings now, she said one evening after everyone else had left. More confident. I'm just doing what you asked me to do. No, you're doing more than that. She leaned back in her chair. When you first walked into my office to fix my computer, you were apologizing for existing. Now you're challenging board members and making executives uncomfortable. Is that a problem? It's a revelation. Victoria smiled. You're becoming who you were always supposed to be. Daniel felt something warm in his chest, something dangerous. Victoria, have dinner with me. The words came out fast, like she'd been holding them in and they'd finally escaped. What? Dinner. This Saturday, not a meeting, not a work discussion, just dinner. Daniel's mind raced. Sophie, bring her. He stared at her. You want to meet my daughter? I want to know you, really know you, not just the version that shows up for project meetings. Victoria stood, walked toward him. We've been dancing around this for weeks, pretending that what's between us is professional. It's not. You know it's not. Victoria, you're a billionaire. I make less in a year than you spend on coffee. I don't care about money. Easy to say when you have it. Fair point. She stopped in front of him, close enough that he could smell her perfume. Something subtle, expensive. But let me ask you something. When you look at me, what do you see? Daniel knew what she wanted him to say, knew what the easy answer was. Instead, he told the truth. I see a woman who's spent her whole life building walls, who's convinced herself that power is the same as safety, who asked a stranger if she was beautiful because she'd forgotten how to ask anyone else. Victoria's breath caught. And I see someone who's starting to remember, Daniel continued, who's starting to want things she'd given up on. And that scares her, because wanting things means you can lose them. You see all that? I see you. That's what I've always done. That's why you asked me to be part of this. Victoria reached out. Her hand touched his chest, right over his heart. Saturday, she said. 7 o'clock. I'll text you the address. Victoria. Please, Daniel, just give me a chance to be a person, not a position, not a billionaire, just Victoria. He looked at her, at the vulnerability in her eyes, at the hope. Okay, he said. Saturday. Her smile was worth every risk. Saturday arrived like a held breath. Daniel spent the morning cleaning the apartment even though Victoria wouldn't see it. He ironed a shirt he hadn't worn in years. He polished shoes that had been gathering dust in his closet. Sophie watched him with undisguised amusement. You're nervous. I'm not nervous. You've checked your hair in the mirror 4 times. I'm making sure it's neat. You never care if your hair is neat. Daniel sighed. Okay. I'm nervous. About the lady. About everything. About whether this is a mistake. About what happens if it works. About what happens if it doesn't. Sophie came over and took his hand. "Dad, remember what you told me about Emily Parker? About how beautiful isn't about clothes or money." "I remember." "Well, maybe this is the same. Maybe it doesn't matter that she's different. Maybe what matters is whether she makes you happy, and whether you make her happy." "When did you become the parent in this relationship?" Sophie grinned. "Someone has to be smart around here." They drove to the address Victoria had texted. It wasn't a restaurant. It was a house. A modest house in a neighborhood Daniel didn't recognize. Brick exterior, small yard, nothing that screamed billionaire. "Is this the right place?" Sophie asked. "I think so." They walked to the front door. Daniel knocked. Victoria opened it. She was wearing jeans, a simple blue sweater. Her hair was down. No makeup that Daniel could see. She looked like the woman in the photograph. "Hi," she said. "Hi." Sophie tugged on Daniel's hand. "Dad, introduce me." "Right, sorry. Victoria, this is Sophie. Sophie, this is Victoria." Victoria crouched down to Sophie's level. "I've heard a lot about you," she said. "Your dad says you're the smartest person he knows." Sophie beamed. "He says that because it's true." Victoria laughed. A real laugh. The kind that transformed her face. "I like her already," she said to Daniel. "Come in. Dinner's almost ready." "You cooked?" "Don't sound so surprised. I wasn't always a CEO." They stepped inside. The house was simple, comfortable, lived in. Nothing like what Daniel had expected. "Whose house is this?" he asked. "Mine. Well, my grandmother's originally. She left it to me when she died." Victoria led them toward the kitchen. "I don't come here often, but when I need to remember who I am, this is where I go." "Like the lake?" "Better than the lake. The lake is about escaping. This place is about remembering." Dinner was simple. Roasted chicken, vegetables, bread from a bakery down the street. They sat at a small table in the kitchen while Sophie asked Victoria 100 questions. "How did you become so rich?" "I started a company." "What kind of company?" "We make software that helps other businesses run better." "Is that fun?" Victoria considered the question. "It used to be. Lately, it's been more work than fun." "Then why do you do it?" "Because I built it. Because people depend on me. Because I don't know what else I would do." Sophie nodded thoughtfully. "My friend Maya's mom is a nurse. She says her job is hard, but she does it because it matters. Does your job matter?" Victoria was quiet for a moment. "I used to think so. Now I'm not sure." "Maybe you need a new job." "Sophie," Daniel said. "That's not—" "No, it's okay." Victoria looked at Sophie with something like wonder. "Maybe you're right. Maybe I do need to think about what really matters." After dinner, Sophie fell asleep on the couch while watching a movie. Daniel covered her with a blanket and followed Victoria to the back porch. They sat in old rocking chairs, looking out at a yard that had seen better days. "I love this place," Victoria said quietly. "My grandmother used to say that houses remember the people who lived in them. That the walls hold on to love and laughter like sponges." "Do you believe that?" "I don't know. But I feel different here. Smaller. In a good way." Daniel looked at her. At the woman who controlled billions of dollars sitting in a rocking chair on a worn wooden porch. "Why did you bring me here?" "Because I wanted you to see me. The real me. Not the version that shows up in boardrooms." "You could have just told me about this place." "Telling isn't the same as showing." She turned to face him. "Daniel, I've spent 15 years surrounded by people who want something from me. My time, my money, my influence. And I've gotten so used to it that I forgot what it felt like to be with someone who wanted nothing except to know who I really am. I'm not that noble. I want things." "What do you want?" The question hung between them. Daniel could give her the safe answer, the careful answer, the one that would keep everything professional and appropriate and comfortable. Instead, he told the truth. I want to know what you look like in the morning before you've built your walls. I want to know what you dream about when you're not dreaming about quarterly projections. I want to know what happened to make you so afraid of being seen that you forgot how to ask for it." Victoria's eyes glistened. "And I want Sophie to have someone in her life besides me who sees how special she is," Daniel continued. "I want to stop being invisible. I want to matter to someone who matters." He paused. "I want you, even though it terrifies me, even though it doesn't make sense. I want you." "Daniel, but I need to know that this is real, that when the project ends and the excitement fades, you'll still want to sit on this porch with me, that you won't wake up one day and realize you made a mistake. Because I can survive a lot of things, but I can't survive being a mistake." Victoria stood, walked to where he sat, knelt down in front of his rocking chair. "When I was 22, my grandmother sat me down in this exact spot and told me that the universe sends us the people we need, that our job is to recognize them when they arrive and have the courage to let them in." She took his hands in hers. "I didn't believe her. I thought love was a distraction, a weakness, something that other people had time for. So I built my walls and made my money and told myself that success was enough." Her voice broke slightly. "It's not enough. It was never enough. And when you walked into my office to fix my computer and looked at that photograph and told me I looked like myself." She stopped, gathered herself. "That was the first time in 15 years that I felt like someone saw through all of it, through the suits and the board meetings and the billions of dollars. Right through to the scared girl who just wanted to build something that mattered." She squeezed his hands. "You're not a mistake, Daniel. You're the answer to a question I was too afraid to ask." Daniel looked at her, at the tears on her cheeks, at the hope and fear in her eyes. He leaned forward and kissed her. It was soft, tentative, like a question being asked. She answered by pulling him closer. And on a worn wooden porch in a house that remembered love, two people who'd spent their lives building walls finally let them fall. The weeks that followed were different. Not a fairy tale. Nothing about their situation was simple enough for fairy tales, but different, better. They kept things quiet at work, professional. The project continued. Progress was made. Changes were implemented. The feedback system was overhauled. The parking garage lights were fixed. Small things that added up to something bigger. But after hours in the spaces between professional obligations, Daniel and Victoria built something else entirely. Sophie adored Victoria. Victoria adored Sophie. They had dinner together twice a week. Victoria taught Sophie about business. Sophie taught Victoria about volcanoes. Daniel watched them together and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. But not everything was perfect. The project had enemies. Donovan hadn't forgotten his humiliation at the board meeting. He was watching, waiting, looking for weakness. And then there was the leak. Victoria still didn't know who had betrayed the project. Who had given Donovan the ammunition he needed. It aided her, made her suspicious of people she'd trusted for years. "It has to be someone on the team," she said one night. They were sitting in her grandmother's kitchen long after Sophie had gone to sleep. No one else had access to the details. "You vetted everyone." Vetting isn't the same as trust. Someone in that room works for Donovan. Someone I've been sitting across from for weeks sharing information that was supposed to be confidential. "What are you going to do?" "Set a trap." Her eyes were cold, the CEO eyes. "Give each team member different information. See which version makes it to Donovan. That's manipulative. That's survival." She looked at him. "I learned a long time ago that people will disappoint you. The trick is figuring out which disappointments you can survive. Not everyone is out to get you, Victoria. Enough people are. And me. Do you think I'm out to get you?" Her expression softened. "No, you're the exception. You've always been the exception." 2 weeks later, Victoria called an emergency team meeting. Daniel arrived to find Marcus, Sarah, and David already seated. Victoria stood at the head of the table. Her face was unreadable. "One of you betrayed this project," she said without preamble. The room went still. "I planted false information with each of you. Different details, different timelines. I wanted to see which version would reach Richard Donovan." She looked at Sarah. "The information that reached him matched what I told you." Sarah's face went pale. "Victoria, how much did he pay you?" "It's not what you think." "How much?" Sarah's composure cracked. "He promised me a VP position. If I helped him get you removed, I'd be VP of Human Resources. Direct report to the new CEO. And you believed him." "I believed that this project would fail, that you were on a crusade that would embarrass the company, that everything I'd worked for would be destroyed because of your sudden interest in making employees feel special." Victoria's jaw tightened. "Get out. Victoria, please. Now." Sarah stood, gathered her things with shaking hands. She stopped at the door. "You think you're different from the rest of us. You think this project makes you a better person. But you're not. You're just as ruthless as everyone else. You just hide it better." She left. The room was silent. Victoria sat down slowly. Her hands were trembling. "Meeting adjourned. We'll reconvene next week." Marcus and David left without a word. Daniel stayed. "Are you okay?" "No." Victoria's voice was hollow. "I trusted her. 5 years she's been with this company. 5 years. And she sold me out for a title that Donovan was never going to give her. People do desperate things when they're afraid. That's not an excuse. I'm not excusing it. I'm explaining it." Daniel sat down across from her. Sarah was scared. Scared that the project would fail and she'd be blamed. Scared that the changes we're making would expose how badly HR has been doing its job. Fear makes people stupid. Fear. Victoria laughed bitterly. "I've spent my entire career making people afraid of me. I thought it was power. Turns out it was just loneliness with better marketing." Daniel reached across the table, took her hand. "You're not alone anymore." Victoria looked at their intertwined fingers. "When I asked you if I was beautiful, you told me I looked like myself. Like a person, not a position." She squeezed his hand. "You were the first person who didn't seem afraid of me, and I didn't know what to do with that." "What did you want to do? Run away? Hide behind my walls? Convince myself that you were just like everyone else, and your honesty was manipulation in disguise? But you didn't." "No, I took a chance. For the first time in 15 years, I let someone in." She looked up at him. "And it's the best decision I've ever made." Daniel stood, walked around the table, pulled her to her feet. "Come home with me tonight. You and Sophie can build a volcano while I make dinner." Victoria almost smiled. "A volcano? She's been wanting to show you. Something about how the baking soda represents magma chambers." "That sounds perfect, actually." "It will be, I promise." Victoria leaned into him, let him hold her. "Daniel." "Yeah." "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me. For staying. For making me believe that the walls I built weren't protecting me. They were just keeping out the things I wanted most." Daniel kissed the top of her head. "The walls are down now." "I know." She looked up at him. "And I've never been more terrified, or more grateful." They left together. Behind them, the empty conference room held the memory of betrayal and the lingering echo of something being rebuilt. Victoria Sterling had lost an employee today, but she'd gained something far more valuable. She'd gained the courage to be seen. The volcano erupted at 7:43 p.m. on a Tuesday night. Sophie had been waiting for the perfect moment. She'd set up the papier-mâché mountain in the middle of Victoria's grandmother's kitchen, surrounded by towels just in case. Daniel held his phone ready to record. Victoria watched with the kind of focused intensity she usually reserved for board meetings. "Ready?" Sophie asked. "Ready?" Daniel and Victoria said together. Sophie poured the vinegar into the hidden cup. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the baking soda reacted, and red-tinted foam bubbled up through the crater and spilled down the sides of the mountain. Sophie cheered. Victoria applauded. Daniel kept filming, capturing his daughter's triumphant face, and the woman beside her who was laughing like she'd forgotten how much she had to worry about. That was amazing, Victoria said. The flow pattern was perfect. Mrs. Patterson helped me get the consistency right. Too much baking soda and it explodes too fast. Too little and it just kind of oozes. The science of eruptions. Very impressive. Sophie beamed. Then her expression turned serious. Victoria. Yes. Are you going to be my dad's girlfriend? Like officially? Daniel nearly dropped his phone. Sophie. It's a fair question, Sophie said. You guys look at each other all the time, and you hold hands when you think I'm not watching. But I'm always watching. I notice things. Victoria glanced at Daniel. Something passed between them, a question and an answer in a single look. Would that be okay with you? Victoria asked Sophie. If I were your dad's girlfriend, Sophie considered this with the gravity of a Supreme Court justice. Do you make him happy? I try to. Do you like volcanoes? I'm developing a deep appreciation for them. Do you promise not to leave because my mom left and it really hurt? And if you're going to leave, I'd rather know now so I can prepare. The kitchen went quiet. Daniel felt his heart crack open. His daughter. His brave, too smart, too hurt daughter asking for the only thing that mattered. Victoria knelt down to Sophie's level. She took her small hands in her own. Sophie, I can't promise that nothing will ever change. Life is complicated. People are complicated. But I can promise you this, I will never leave without telling you. I will never disappear. And no matter what happens between your dad and me, I will always care about you. Always. Sophie stared at her for a long moment. Okay, she said finally. Then yes, you can be his girlfriend. Victoria smiled. Thank you for the permission. You're welcome. Now can we make another volcano I want to try with more baking soda? The project reached its 6-month milestone on a Friday in March. Daniel stood in the conference room on the 45th floor, looking at the presentation they'd prepared for the board. Charts showing turnover reduction, employee satisfaction scores climbing for the first time in years. Testimonials from workers at every level about feeling heard, feeling valued, feeling seen. It was working. Against all odds, against all opposition, it was actually working. Victoria walked in dressed in the navy suit she wore for important meetings, but something was different about her now. A softness around the edges that hadn't been there 6 months ago. A willingness to smile that she'd kept hidden behind walls for 15 years. Ready? She asked. As ready as I'll ever be. Daniel? She walked over to him, took his hands. Whatever happens in there, I want you to know that this project succeeded the moment you walked into my office and told me the truth. Everything else is just data. The board won't see it that way. The board can go to hell. She smiled. I've spent my whole career trying to please people who were never going to be pleased. I'm done with that. We built something real. We changed lives. If they can't see that it's their blindness, not our failure. When did you become an optimist? When I started spending time with a man who sees the best in people even when they don't deserve it. She squeezed his hands. You changed me, Daniel. You made me believe that being seen wasn't a weakness, that letting people in wasn't a mistake. You did the hard part. I just fixed your computer. Victoria laughed. That real laugh he'd fallen in love with. Best computer crash I ever had. The board meeting was different this time. Daniel sat at the table, not at the far end, but near the middle. He belonged here now. Everyone knew it. Richard Donovan was notably absent. The silver-haired woman, Margaret Chen Daniel, had learned her name, had called for an investigation into his conduct after Sarah's termination. The investigation was still ongoing, but Donovan had stepped back from active board participation, pending its conclusion. Victoria presented the data. Clear, confident, compelling. Turnover had dropped by 31% in 6 months. Employee satisfaction had increased by 47%. The feedback system had processed over 2,000 suggestions, with 340 implemented and another 500 under review. The parking garage lights were fixed. The third-floor break room had a new microwave. And George, the janitor who'd worked at Sterling Industries for 22 years, had been personally thanked by Victoria in front of the entire company at a town hall meeting. Small things, big impacts. When Victoria finished, Margaret Chen spoke first. "Miss Sterling, I've been on this board for 12 years. In that time, I've seen a lot of initiatives come and go. Most of them were about optics, making the company look good without actually changing anything." She paused. "This is different. This is real. And I think I speak for most of us when I say that we owe you an apology for not supporting it sooner." Murmurs of agreement around the table. "Thank you, Margaret. But I'm not the one who deserves the apology." Victoria looked at Daniel. "Mr. Hayes is the one who made this possible. He's the one who saw what we were all too blind to see. He's the one who spoke truth to power when it would have been easier to stay silent." Daniel felt every eye in the room turn to him. "I just told the truth," he said. "That's all I've ever done." "And that's exactly what we needed." Margaret smiled. "Mr. Hayes, I don't know what your official title is in this company." "IT technician," Daniel said. "Level 2. "Well, I think it's time we discussed changing that. Someone who can speak to the board the way you do deserves a seat at bigger tables." Daniel looked at Victoria. She was smiling. That knowing smile that said she'd been expecting this. "I appreciate the offer," he said carefully. "But I don't want a promotion that takes me away from the people I'm supposed to be representing. The moment I move to the executive floor, I stop being one of them. And then I stop being useful." Silence. Margaret nodded slowly. "That's the most honest thing anyone's ever said in this room. And probably the wisest." "He has a habit of that," Victoria said. "Being wise when the rest of us are being foolish." The board voted unanimously to continue the project indefinitely. Expanded funding. Company-wide implementation. A permanent role for Daniel as employee. Liaison with an office on the 3rd floor, right where he'd always been. After the meeting, Daniel and Victoria stood alone in the conference room. "You could have taken the promotion," Victoria said. "A seat at the executive table, more money, more influence." "I didn't do this for money or influence." "Then why did you do it?" Daniel thought about the question. Really thought about it. "Because you asked me if you were beautiful. And the answer mattered to you. And I realized that if the most powerful woman in the building needed someone to see her, then there were probably thousands of other people in this company who needed the same thing." Victoria's eyes glistened. "You changed everything, Daniel. Not just for me. For this whole company. We changed it together." "No." She shook her head. "I had the power, the money, the position. But I didn't have the courage to use them until you showed me how. You're the one who made this real." She stepped closer. "I love you." The words hung in the air. Daniel had known it, had felt it in every look, every touch, every quiet moment they'd shared. But hearing her say it out loud, this woman who'd spent her whole life building walls, who'd asked a stranger if she was beautiful, because she'd forgotten how to ask anyone else, hearing her say it, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. "I love you too," he said. Victoria kissed him. Right there in the conference room where they'd fought battles and won wars and built something that neither of them had expected. When she pulled back, she was smiling. "Come to Vermont with me." "What?" "The lake, my grandmother's cabin. Spring is beautiful there. The ice is just starting to melt and the whole world feels like it's waking up." She took his hands. "I've been telling myself for 3 years that I'd go back, that I'd find that feeling again, the peace, the sense of being myself." And now I don't want to find it alone. I want to share it with you, with Sophie. Her voice caught. I want to build a new memory there, one with people I love. Victoria. I know it's fast. I know it doesn't make sense. A billionaire and an IT technician, a single dad and a CEO. Nothing about us makes sense. She squeezed his hands. But it's real, and that's more than I've had in 15 years. Daniel looked at her, at the woman who'd asked him if she was beautiful, at the woman who'd let him see behind her walls, at the woman who'd become part of his life and Sophie's life in ways he never expected. Sophie has spring break in 2 weeks, he said. If you can wait that long. Victoria's face lit up. I can wait. Spring break arrived on a Sunday morning. Daniel packed the car while Sophie bounced around the apartment, unable to contain her excitement. She'd never been to Vermont. She'd never seen a lake surrounded by mountains. She'd never been on a vacation that wasn't visiting her grandmother in Ohio. Dad, do you think there will be fish? Can we go fishing? Does Victoria know how to fish? I've never fished, but I want to try. Maya says fishing is boring, but I think she just hasn't tried it properly. I don't know if there are fish. We'll have to find out. What if there are bears? There probably won't be bears. But what if there are? Then we'll stay very quiet and let them do their bear things. Victoria arrived at 8 o'clock. She was driving herself, not a town car, not a driver, just her in a modest SUV that she'd bought specifically for trips to the cabin. Ready? She asked. Ready, Sophie shouted. They drove north. The city fell away behind them. The highways narrowed to roads. The roads narrowed to lanes. The buildings gave way to trees and fields and sky. Sophie fell asleep in the back seat somewhere around hour 3. Daniel looked over at Victoria. She was focused on the road, but there was a peace in her expression that he'd only seen in photographs until recently. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For this. For Vermont. For letting us into your life. Victoria reached over and took his hand. Thank you for seeing me when no one else did. For being honest when it would have been easier to lie. For making me believe that I could be more than a position. You were always more than a position. You just forgot. I did forget. She glanced at him. But you reminded me. Every day. In every conversation. Every time you looked at me like I was a person instead of a problem to be solved. They drove in comfortable silence. Outside the windows the world kept changing. Greener, wilder, more alive. The cabin appeared in the late afternoon. It was smaller than Daniel had expected, wooden, weathered, sitting at the edge of a lake that stretched out toward mountains, still capped with snow. Sophie woke up as the car stopped. We're here. She scrambled out of the back seat. Oh my gosh, it's so pretty. Can I go to the water? Please? Stay where we can see you, Daniel said. Sophie ran toward the lake. Victoria and Daniel stood by the car watching her go. I took that photograph right there, Victoria said, pointing to a wooden dock that extended into the water. 3 years ago, the last time I felt like myself. How do you feel now? Victoria turned to look at him. Like myself, but better. Because this time, I'm not alone. They spent 5 days at the cabin. Daniel learned to fish. Sophie learned to skip stones. Victoria learned to make s'mores without burning the marshmallows, a skill that took 3 attempts and resulted in a lot of laughter. They hiked trails that Victoria's grandmother had walked decades ago. They sat on the porch and watched sunsets that turned the lake into liquid gold. They talked about everything and nothing, the future, the past, the strange path that had led an IT technician to fix a billionaire's computer and change both of their lives. On the 4th night after Sophie was asleep in one of the cabin's small bedrooms, Daniel and Victoria sat on the dock. Their feet dangled over the water. Stars spread out above them like scattered diamonds. My grandmother used to say that the universe sends us the people we need, Victoria said. I didn't believe her for a long time. Do you believe her now? Yes. She leaned her head against his shoulder. I believe that you walked into my office at exactly the right moment. That you saw that photograph at exactly the right time. That you told me the truth when I desperately needed someone to be honest with me. It was just a computer crash. It was more than that. It was fate, or destiny, or just dumb luck. She lifted her head to look at him. I don't care what we call it. I'm just grateful it happened. So am I. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the water lap against the dock. Daniel, yeah. Will you marry me? The question hit him like a wave. He turned to look at her. Her face was serious, vulnerable, the walls completely down. You're supposed to let me ask that. I'm a CEO. I don't wait for other people to make decisions for me. Daniel laughed, but the laughter faded quickly, replaced by something deeper, something he'd been feeling for months, but hadn't known how to name. Victoria Sterling, billionaire, CEO, the most powerful woman I've ever met. That's me. Asking an IT technician to marry her, on a dock in Vermont, under the stars. Also me. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Her eyes were bright. You see me, Daniel, the real me, not the position or the money or the power, just me. And I don't want to spend another day without that. Daniel looked at her, at the woman who'd asked him if she was beautiful, at the woman who'd taught him that being seen went both ways, at the woman who'd become his partner, his friend, his love. Yes, he said. Yes, I'll marry you, on one condition. What condition? We get married here, at this cabin, on this dock, where you remembered how to be yourself. Victoria's smile was everything. Deal. She kissed him, and under the Vermont stars, two people who'd spent their lives being invisible to each other found something that neither of them had expected. They found home. The wedding happened 3 months later. It was small, intimate, just the people who mattered. Sophie was the flower girl. She walked down the aisle, which was really just the path from the cabin to the dock, with the gravity of a Supreme Court justice being sworn in. Mrs. Patterson came. So did Marcus and David from the project team. Margaret Chen flew in from New York. George, the 22-year janitor, stood in the front row with tears in his eyes. Victoria wore a simple white dress. No designer label. No team of stylists. Just her looking exactly like the woman in the photograph that had started everything. Daniel wore a suit he'd bought at a department store. It cost less than Victoria spent on coffee in a week. She told him he'd never looked more handsome. The ceremony was short. The vows were simple. I promise to see you, Victoria said. Every day, even when it's hard, even when you'd rather be invisible. I promise to look and to listen and to love you for exactly who you are. I promise to tell you the truth, Daniel said. Even when it's uncomfortable, even when you don't want to hear it. I promise to be your mirror and your anchor and your partner in everything that matters. They exchanged rings. They kissed. Sophie cheered. And on a wooden dock by a lake in Vermont, surrounded by the people who loved them, Daniel Hayes and Victoria Sterling became a family. The reception was held in the cabin. Music played from an old speaker. Food was simple barbecue and salads and a cake that Sophie had helped decorate. People danced on the porch. Laughter echoed across the water. At some point in the evening, Daniel found himself standing alone by the lake, looking out at the mountains, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. Sophie appeared beside him. Dad. Yeah, sweetheart. Are you happy? Daniel looked at his daughter. 8 years old, almost 9 now. Too smart for her age. Too brave for her size. The best thing he'd ever done in his life. Yes, he said. I'm happy. Good, me too. She slipped her hand into his. Victoria's really nice. And she loves you. I can tell because of how she looks at you. How does she look at me? Like you're the answer to a question she's been asking for a long time. Sophie paused. That's what Maya's mom says love looks like, when someone looks at you like you're the answer. Daniel squeezed her hand. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise, Dad. You just notice it more now. Victoria joined them a moment later. She wrapped her arms around both of them, pulling them into a group hug. My two favorite people, she said, looking at the view without me. We were waiting for you, Sophie said. Were you? Yes. The view is better when you're here. Victoria's eyes met Daniel's over Sophie's head. He saw everything in that look. The past, the future, the life they were building together. She's right, Daniel said. Everything is better when you're here. Victoria smiled. That real smile, the one from the photograph that had started everything. Then I'll stay, she said. Forever. And she did. Years later, when people asked Daniel how he met his wife, he told them the truth. I fixed her computer. She asked me if she was beautiful. I told her the truth. They always wanted more details, more drama, more explanation. But that was the whole story. Everything that mattered was contained in those 3 sentences. He fixed her computer. She asked him if she was beautiful. He told her the truth. Sometimes the biggest love stories start with the smallest moments. A crashed system. A photograph that loaded by accident. A question that no one expected. Sometimes being seen is all it takes. Sometimes being honest changes everything. Daniel learned that lesson on a Tuesday morning on the 45th floor of a building where he'd been invisible for 3 years. He learned that the most powerful people are often the loneliest. That walls built for protection become prisons. That truth is the only foundation strong enough to build a life on. Victoria learned it too. She learned that asking for help wasn't weakness. That being seen wasn't dangerous. That somewhere in the space between power and vulnerability, there was room for love. And Sophie learned that beautiful isn't about clothes or money, or where you sit in a cafeteria. Beautiful is who you are when nobody's watching. Beautiful is kindness and honesty and showing up for the people you love. 3 people. 3 lessons. 1 family. Built on the foundation of a single honest answer to a question that shouldn't have been asked. Do you think I'm beautiful? Yes. But not for the reason you think. In the end, that was enough. In the end, it was everything.